Welcome to Anecdotes for Success with Matt and Paul. Storytelling is an art form, emphasizing the value and learning that is created through personal experience. Our purpose is to share these stories and experiences with the listener. Everyone has a powerful testimony. Let's use them to level up to our best life with truth, meaning, trade-offs, and perspective.
Big shout out to Isaac Mather for the new podcast intro. You can check Isaac's music out on all socials or directly at isaacmathermusic.com. All right, we have Jay Sedgwick, account executive. Big night. The three of us all graduated the same high school just a few years ago. Jay, you're in Maryland now. Matt's up the road from me, and I'm still the townie. But we're gonna all introduce ourselves, and we'll let Jay get started. I am Paul Richmond,
and I'm Matt, of course. But guys, I got to first comment that this is the look of a guy who's got a 7-week baby at home now. Where you're just fighting for showers, and if you could smell me, you would smell from burping. You'd have some spit up and that kind of thing. So particularly Jay's looking. Paul always looks better, but now I'm third wheel here. So anyway, Jay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, please. I'm Jay Sedgwick. Thank you guys so much for having me. I've been how do they say this? Long-time listener, first-time caller. Been enjoying the pod, as the kids say. I'm really trying not to sound like a grandfather. Oh my gosh. But the pod's been really good. The guests that you've had on are very impressive. So I'm not going to follow in anyone's footsteps. I'm just going to be me because I don't know who else to be. But you guys are doing a great job. And before we hit record, Matt, gave us some gold. You're doing it for the right reasons, guys. You're doing it for the kids. You're doing it to make the path easier for kids coming up. You're doing it to make the path easier and lighten the load for the next generation, which is what our parents did for us and their parents did for them. So I'm really proud of you guys. I'm really excited. I mean that. I'm not trying to be emotional and weird first thing in the morning, but you guys are doing a great job.
Thanks, Jay. That's obviously sincere, and that's very much appreciated. And I would like to think that that's true and that's coming across. And you're right. We've had awesome guests. We've been from when we started, Paul, right, to where we are, and we've always had good guests. But now that just the difference from all over the place that we're getting is really exciting for us. And Jay, you did you graduate with Paul?
I did. Class of 1990. Go Blue Raiders.
That's right. We didn't know each other, but I definitely recognize you. There you go. I definitely reckon. I mean, you would have been older than me a few years, like Paul, and Paul never talked to me then, even though we grew up in the same neighborhood. So certainly you wouldn't have. But it's good to see you 33 years later, I guess.
Yeah. Thanks very much, and I hope that your memory of me is a pleasant one. We never know, right? But please understand,
yes, it was.
We grew up in a time, guys, where we didn't talk to the kids 1 year older than us unless we were asked to, and we certainly didn't talk to the kids younger than us unless there was a purpose. Sports brought us together, maybe scouts, maybe church. There were a few other reasons to intermix, but there was such a healthy respect for our elders, and that included the kids 1 grade older, right? So the fact that you guys were able to reconnect later is great. I'm not going to name names because I don't know who's going to watch this, but I reconnected with a buddy from our class, Paul, and he ended up marrying a woman from Horseheads who's a few years younger. Younger. And that didn't happen a lot when we were in school, right? But nowadays, I mean, what's 4 or 5 years? That's not a big deal. But when you're 18 or 19, it's different. But anyway, that's an aside. I don't know why I brought that up, but that's just nerves, guys. Just a little nerves there.
No, it's great. And one of the reasons we do this is for a selfish reason for me is I like conversations, connecting with people. A lot of the guests have come back and Zoomed in our classroom. My classroom, you two are both people that have been in my classroom. Jay, you made the trip all the way up from Maryland, and now you're currently mentoring some kids. as is Matt. And I mean, you can start wherever you want. You can go back to the day of graduation, or you can go back to what you've been doing for a career, or you can talk about the project with the students. Go ahead. We'll have plenty of questions to ask and pivot along the way and take plenty of exits.
Well, Matt, most of my humor is self-deprecating, but occasionally I'll take shots at people. And I remember on graduation day, Paul Richmond ignoring me and blowing me off and big timing me and being too cool for me. So you weren't the only one he didn't talk to back in high school.
You've got my attention.
Yeah.
You've got
Yeah.
my attention.
You know,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Those varsity golfers, you know, they ran in their own circle, you know.
Yeah, they're elite. They were the elite of the elite. The 1% of the 1%.
That was the year they called it a sport and gave us uniforms, you know. So we had a lot to be thankful for back then.
So for anybody that's watching this under the age of 50, that was a time where, and no particular order, right? You guys are going to use all your production magic to make this all make sense.
Oh yeah.
We used to have our uniforms paid for by the state and by the county. We used to have all the fees paid for by the state and county. And Paul, do you remember we had driver's ed as a class instead of science or math or English? In third period, I had driver's ed, and my parents didn't pay $1, thank gosh, because we thank God we didn't have extra money back then. So I probably wouldn't have taken driver's ed. I'd probably still be busing it or hitchhiking now. But our gym teacher or gym teachers became our driving instructors, and it was a magical time where the county and the state just paid for just about everything for us.
Yeah, that's true. What happened to that? You're right. That was a different. I hadn't thought of that, Jay. Honestly, I'd forgotten about some of those differences. And Paul, you being in the school system so many years, obviously that's probably, you're very, very aware of those kinds of things. It's just mostly just a tax-paying citizen who doesn't have any children in that age group. I don't think about that, but there are some dramatic differences, aren't there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of politics. They have caps in New York State, especially. You can only increase local taxes so much percent. So then you're at the mercy of state and federal governments who keep pumping more mandates down your throat that you have to accommodate. But the money's you're never going to have enough money in a public sector, right? I used to talk about externalities and stuff in economics. There's never going to be a shortage of cigarettes, never going to be a shortage of beer or porn or movie streaming or whatever's going on. But when it comes to like public services, I mean, there's an unlimited amount of people that are going to hold their hand out, and schools are one of them. Actually, I'm not smart enough to know the solution, but that's kind of what's happened.
Yeah, and I don't want you to feel defensive at all, Paul. And I don't think you are, but I'm pro student. I'm pro teacher. I'm pro public education. So all those things I'm in favor of. But like you, we were sort of raised, don't complain about something unless you have some ideas. If you've got some solutions, bring up a topic. So to talk about me bringing this up and complaining without a solution, I think there are ways to add surcharges to things that maybe aren't good for us. There's a lot of, and we're not going to get political. It's certainly not my arena, but there was the sugar tax, and there was the soda tax, and there was the junk food tax. I heard, or at least saw a headline where they're going to put surcharges on elective surgeries, and surcharges on people that break the law, and surcharges for people that get speeding camera violations or run red lights, and just add $5 here. And then that money goes to people that may be in need, or that might go back to the state or the county or the public good, right? So I think there are ways to get creative. No one would like it if we charged an extra $5 or $10 every time there was a speed light camera, or if you run a red light. But at the same time, if you don't break the law, and you don't have to pay the surcharge. So, I think there's opportunities for us to collect funds in creative ways.
I think about my class. I mean, just leave us alone. Don't give us any mandates. I mean, we use very little money. I mean, my class is a little bit of the exception. Mm-hmm. We don't need anything. We don't have standardized tests, and we don't have milk day and snack day, and we just kind of go about our own business.
I miss milk day.
There are solutions. Popcorn day. I don't know, whatever days there are.
Right.
I feel bad. I feel bad at the lower levels because they've just become an all encompassing provider. And I don't know, how do you ever have enough money when you're trying to provide everything for everyone, right?
Well, those are huge words, and Matt, you had said it, I think, in maybe multiple of the podcasts I've heard in the past. You can't do everything, and you can't serve everyone. However, you can do anything, and you can serve anyone. You just have to be creative, and you just have to be selective. It
Selective.
took, yeah, it took me a long time. What do you guys use the word? You guys use trade-offs. That's one of your four pillars.
Yeah.
So it took me a long time to understand that I can have anything I want, anything I want. And that's not the American dream. That's not a wives' tale. That's not, fairy tale. It's real, but I can't have everything that I want. And so trade-offs, I'd really like to spend some time at some point during the conversation talking about the four pillars, because I absolutely adore it. I think it's fantastic. It's easy for a C student with ADHD like me to put my arms around something. The company I just started to work for has four pillars as well, and that helps me kind of understand. Okay, this is what they're all about. I'm writing personal pillars. I want to have four pillars that I present to my family and my friends, and organically just sort of manifest into who I want to be, just to summarize, but also to kind of keep me grounded.
Jay, that's exactly what they are for me, and they evolved over time, of course, and it's almost like a value system in some ways. But the way I look at them, and that's why I find them so important, is it helps me guide my decision making, and it helps me draw lines into my life of what I'm willing to do or not willing to do, and how I just basically how I look at the world. And I always say the best one is this, and then I go, and then now I think the best one is that. And they're all very important, but that's what it does for me. It just allows me, the trade-offs. I'll just use that one quickly as an example. And I said this to a couple students recently. I said, if you accept that everything has a trade-off, if you accept that and realize that to be true, or believe it to be true, then every decision you make, you realize has some other trade-off, and you now automatically go looking for that trade-off. And you don't just think, I got the solution. And Paul, you use the word just momentarily. I use the word solution all the time, but I don't believe it exists.
Right.
There is something else behind the scenes going on. There's that trade somewhere else. That it doesn't mean that one's not better than the other, though. I always make sure I'm clear with the students as well. Just because I say there's a trade-off doesn't mean that one isn't clearly the better option. Just understand there is something else there that you should be considering. And if you can't find it, it's not because it doesn't exist. You just haven't searched hard enough yet. It's time to keep searching for it. So, and that just allows me and the people who subscribe to, this theory, whoever those lunatics may be, it just helps you make better decisions. And I believe your life's your decisions. But that's, everyone's heard that, of course. But they're not something to put on the back of a T-shirt so I can talk about or promote or something like that. They're literally things I live by. And Jay kind of teed me up for that. That's why I went off on that tangent.
Paul, you were going to say something.
No, I was just saying Matt should start a TikTok channel with the four pillars.
Don't tempt me. I was just talking to my wife this morning. She was kind of giving me a pep talk to not be nervous and not be in the fetal position, scared to be on camera. And she said, look,
so far, so good.
Yeah, so far, right? I'm a little bit shy. I'm a little bit introverted, Matt. We'll get to know each other better. But she's like, look, don't be afraid of TikTok. Like if you're doing your personal branding, which this isn't an hour about that, but if you're going to explore different channels and different revenue streams and different ideas and different ways to go to market, don't be afraid of TikTok. And she's old like me. We're both over 50 and we're not afraid of technology, but we're certainly a little hesitant to jump on board, whereas some other people may not be. But Paul, before we go into your next question, Matt, you said something that I can't let go of. Did you say that you don't believe in the word solution singular, or you don't believe the way we use that word? Like, what did you mean by that? You don't believe there's a solution?
What I mean is I've yet to find something that is a solution to I'll use the word problem, I guess, that does not have a consequence to it, that also has something to deal with. For
Okay.
instance, for instance, the um, the school lunch program, let's say, where everyone gets free lunches, only because that just we're talking
Sure.
about that.
Right.
That has some great benefits, but it also comes. So someone might say to me, "We've got a solution to this problem for these kids who can't afford lunches." Let's say something that I would agree we have to deal with, right? I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying, okay, now that we've decided we're going to do that and provide these free lunches, what are the so that is the quote unquote solution. Well, it comes at a cost, it a financial cost. It also comes at a cost of I firmly believe if you give anybody anything, there is a tendency to feel dependence, and
Oh, wow.
that has a cost too. And I'm not
Sure.
saying it's a cost of a financial cost, although I could make that argument as well. It has some social cost to it.
Sure.
It has what about the kid when we were growing up, before everyone had free lunches, or when my daughter, I have an older daughter who's 24, the kids who got free lunches, well, they were the kids who got picked on because they were poor. And
Mhm.
so there was
Mhm.
a cost, right? Because they got
Right.
ostracized unfairly. And that's what I'm getting at. One thing, there's
Yeah.
always a trade-off somewhere, a cost somewhere that often it's why I despise politicians in some manner. I mean, I'm being a little bit overboard, but this idea that they'll get up there in front of us and say, I'm going to solve X problem, right? I'll pick the border. We're gonna shut down the border, and that's gonna solve something. Well, it'll
Mhm.
solve something, but it's gonna create another problem.
Yep.
Right.
Or we're
Right.
gonna leave it wide open, and I'm just taking both extremes just for the sake. I'm not getting political either. Or we're gonna leave it wide open. Well, that has some benefits, I would argue, but it also has some problems, right? So that's all I mean, Jay, if that makes sense.
I appreciate that. So that makes perfect sense. So there's not a solution singular because any solution comes with trade-offs, which is a great use of that word. But there are solutions, plural. There are multiple options. There are multiple solutions. There are multiple ideas, but each
Yes.
one has its own set of consequences. And Paul, is it Newton's law where every action has an equal and opposite reaction? Is that Newton's law? Einstein's law? Somebody had a law that we learned about in school, and
I
it's
think it is Newton. I think
I
it
think
is
it is
Newton.
too.
so if you offer free lunch, well, that sounds great in theory. If you offer free education, if you offer free healthcare,
Yes.
but what's the opposite cause or opposite problem that could potentially create? And it's everything you mentioned, Matt. It's economic, it's social, it's independent, it's mental, it's there's all kinds of things that
Yeah.
people need to consider. My daughter, my oldest, I'll brag about her for a minute. She just became the first doctor in the family, and
Oh
she
wow.
finished
Awesome.
pharmacy school, right? So her entire reason for being in a hospital is if you take medicine X, what is that going to do if you're taking medicine Y? And if you
Yes.
have medicine X and Y, what happens if you add medicine Z? And it's all the things that you're talking about.
Yeah.
There's going to be ramifications and complications on the other side. So to bring this back to something that students could use or we could benefit from in this conversation, any decision we make in business, any amount of money we spend, any amount of money we invest, any decision or any plan we come up with is going to be at the expense of something else. Do we invest in R&D? Do we invest in advertising? Do we invest in employee engagement? Do we invest in a new market or a new city or a new widget, right? And all those things, to your point, have trade-offs. And there's unrealized cost and unanticipated costs, and I'm struggling to remember the cliche, but there's costs associated with everything that we do.
Jay, you said it better than I think I have in the many times I've said it. Maybe we should stop there, Paul. I don't need to get replaced in this.
Yeah.
podcast.
Oh, it's an
And I love
ongoing audition weekly. It's ongoing weekly.
three
Yeah,
horses.
good luck,
trying
Matt.
to
He
talk
called
about
me
Steve's
last night
law.
and said, we're going to try him out for a few more of these podcasts. It's only been 100 and what, 102, 103. So he's doing all right. He's doing all right, Paul.
Luckily, Matt doesn't know how to upload it, so he's stuck with me.
So you can't be replaced, right?
Yeah, well, I'm sure I can. He could snap his fingers.
No, everybody has a role.
Back to the schools, I shouldn't have said I don't know the solution. I know the trade-off of the fact that in the last 30 years, there's been more control from state and federal level than there used to be. So with that control means more dependence at the local level, and then your hands are tied. So you guys talking kind of helped me correct myself, if that makes sense.
Good.
Paul, that's the beauty of it. And that's why I think it's always, when I have these conversations, and I love to have them, my wife sometimes rolls her eyes like, here we go again, this guy with his trade-off conversation. But I find it so fascinating. And it's funny because, Jay, I get this from people. They'll go, they'll say, well, let's say I believe in capitalism. I think it's the best system, that we have out there available, right? Not
right.
Was it Churchill, since we're quoting things, Churchill said it's the best system. It's the worst system we have except for the rest.
I'm in a fact check right now because my computer over here is up and running.
But people could push back on me and say, well, yeah, but Matt, you think capitalism, is great. I go, well, I think it's the best we have. But if you want me to start listing trade-offs to it, buckle up, because here I come.
Yeah.
All that means is, I always say I don't get to not play the game too. I don't get a free ride. I don't get a free pass. It's the same thing. Whether I might believe the trade-offs are superior, given the other options and given the other, I like the word you use, Jay, ramifications that might exist or that do exist. But I certainly got to recognize that they're out there. So, right. And I find that's what I find fascinating about it, and how you can learn. But when you've got that politician telling you they're going to solve your problem, and if it is at a trade-off, it's against some evil person who you don't know. It's against some boogeyman, and it's okay not to worry about them. So that's why I find that offensive. But Paul, was I right?
Yeah. So couple things. I think you said earlier, I'm the note taker. Giving causes dependence. So when politicians or schools or businesses or CEOs, if they want to control instead of lead, it's going to cause a dependence. And I think that just is going to create more problems, more different trade-offs, I guess, not solutions. So Sir Isaac Newton, to any action, there's always an opposite and equal reaction. Okay. Winston Churchill, capitalism is the worst economic system except for all the others.
That's such a great quote. That's such a great quote.
Now I got to quote somebody. Maybe I'll quote Lil Wayne or something. I don't know. But
we got to keep it clean. We got to keep it clean for the kids.
I want to shift gears a little to the social media, specifically TikTok, because I was joking about it.
Okay.
But I'm not. Like, my
Paul
daughters.
And Jay, before we do that, can Jay tell us a little bit about your background and what you do, Jay? Why should these people listen to you? And what kind of credibility do you, for all we know, you broke into this house you're at and put on someone else's clothes and you look sharp and you're quoting, Newton and all these things. But other than that, tell us about yourself a little bit, because I haven't seen you in 33 years. I didn't know you were going to be on until 29 minutes ago. And, I think that's great. We haven't had a chance to learn a little bit about you, Jay, and I'd like to.
Have you guys ever heard of the Talking Heads? This is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. Right? I mean, it's a dream. I'm living a dream. As far as why your listeners should be listening to me and why people should engage, hang on a second. Yeah, no, they're questioning my credibility. I don't have any. Okay, I'll let them know. I gotta go. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for the time, because there's absolutely no reason why people should listen to me. And I mean that sincerely, but obviously I'm kidding for the 3 people that are going to watch this at home, and 2 of them would be my daughters. I think the fact that you had mentioned that you like to have these conversations, you're saying the same thing that I was saying in my head. During the pandemic, I was having conversations just like this with people on the phone, but we weren't recording, right? So even if nobody goes back and watches this, and if this is your lowest rated show, and this is obviously my insecurity and my ego coming to the center stage, there's still going to be stuff that I've gained and stuff that you've gained, and hopefully things that Paul, besides quotes, has learned that are going to make us better moving forward. So one of the things that I wanted to do today is I wanted to promote the profession of sales and the profession of selling. And I want to talk about that, but before you guys hang up on me, and I want to be respectful of time. And I know we're into this for a few minutes already, but I've been an enterprise salesperson for 28 plus years. I've got the gray hairs and the scars to show it. I'm a dinosaur in my industry, and our industry is full of dinosaurs because it's an older business. I work for a marketing firm. And I like to say I work for a marketing execution firm, meaning we don't necessarily do all the things that we help our clients with. We outsource quite a bit. We work with third-party partners, and we deliver on behalf of our clients. Now, that's a horrible commercial, boss. I'm sorry. I'm going to work on it. I'm gonna work on my pitch and be better. But just to be genuine with you guys, I am really proud of people that sell for a living. And Paul got to hear a little bit of this rap with his students, but I talked to my clients about it. I talked to my family about it. I talked to my kids about it. And the bottom line for me is there's 2 ways, besides being a teacher, Paul, there's 2 ways to generate wealth and become very wealthy in the United States. One is to own your own business. Like I'm going to go out on a limb, Matt, and say that you created your own thing. And that's a really, really good way in our country to generate wealth. The other is to go into sales. I don't need to have an advanced degree. I don't need any special trade schooling. I don't need to learn any special skills like the military would teach me. I just need to have the courage to go out and connect with people. And if you can become proficient, not even an expert, but proficient at sales and communication, I would say is probably the most important part of that. You can make a nice living, and you can generate some wealth, and you can generate a strong income. And I want everybody to know that it's something to be proud of. It is a profession. It's a white collar profession, right? I'm wearing my nice crisp white shirt. We didn't have to go to law school. We didn't have to go to medical school, but yet we're in that white collar profession.
Jay, I'm I didn't know that. I got I guess a hint when we first started talking, but I didn't know this. And first of all, thank you for having that desire to beat the drum for sales, and how, not just how important it is, but how life-changing it can be. And you said there's 2 ways to build wealth, and I agree. One is a business and one is sales. The only thing I would disagree with that is you're not building a business if you don't know how to sell. I mean, very rarely, rarely. It is as a business builder of many, I guess, at this point in my life, and someone who would like to think he's been a successful entrepreneur, when I'm asked what I do, my answer is I'm a salesperson. And it's been that answer, Jay, for decades. I've been a salesperson for decades. I'm a salesperson today, and I'll be one tomorrow. I promise you that. If I didn't have that skill or that, because I agree with, I'm rewinding some of the things you've said, but I didn't have that ability to take those rejections and all those lessons and just keep going and moving and cry in the corner at night when no one's looking, which I have, which you probably have as well.
Of course.
I would never be a business builder. I tell my older daughter, who I reference all the time, and my younger daughter, who will be learning the same lessons. Sell. You got to learn how to sell. You don't have to be a salesperson your whole life if you don't want, although you will be whether you realize it or not. But Selling is the number one thing I would give anyone who's trying to build wealth, build a business. It's a dirty word, right, for some people, which is why I think you're out there talking about it. And again, kudos. Let me know. Let me know. I'll get on the bus with you because I love it. I'm telling you, I love it. It is so under talked about. It's kind of Jay, you clearly weren't smart enough to be a doctor or a lawyer, or you didn't have the grades to go be an engineer or whatever it is. So I guess you had to become a salesperson, and nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, it is just so. I'll shut up there, but I just had to chime in that you want to build a business. Anyone listen, you want to be a great entrepreneur, business person, you better learn how to sell, and that's all I'll say about that.
Again, this could take 6 hours to unpack, and everything you said, I agree with. I didn't want to say the only way to build wealth is to sell, but you bring up good points. There's been CEOs of giant organizations and giant companies that didn't go to college, they didn't go to finishing school, they didn't go to prep school, they weren't taught to write well, but they were either they learned through their family or through their childhood all the personal relationship skills. Again, I get emotional and I get really sad. Our kids aren't going through the necessary building block steps to become effective communicators. And I could talk about this for hours too, you guys. So I apologize if we're going off on a strange tangent. But when we were in junior high school, we had to learn the art of negotiation in every step of our day. We had to negotiate at home what we were going to get away with taking to junior high school and sneaking past our parents. Whether you had both parents at home, one parent at home, you were being raised by your grandparents, it didn't matter. But there was an adult, most likely, or a close friend looking over you, and you had to negotiate. Well, I want to wear my Pepsi Cola shirt, or I want to wear my Nike half shirt that's warm, or I want to wear my Puma hooded windbreaker so I can break dance with my buddies at recess, or whatever the case may be. We had to negotiate, and then take it a step farther. We had to negotiate with the opposite sex. If I wanted to talk to, let's just embarrass Paul. Let's pretend that Paul had an older sister. All right, Paul, you don't have an older sister, right?
No.
Younger. You have younger sisters. Okay, so let's pretend Paul has an older sister, so it doesn't get weird. Paul's got an older sister, and I've been spending a lot of time at Paul's house after ice hockey in the pond, and I really like his sister. If I wanted to meet or spend time with Paul's older sister, we'll call her Sarah, I would have to call the house, and no matter who answered, ask for Sarah.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of courage to pick up the phone and ask a stranger, in this case, Paul's mom or Paul's dad, to speak to their daughter. That was the first hurdle. And Paul's mean. Paul's mean. And most likely Paul would hang up. No, you can't talk to my sister. And truth be told, Matt, I probably would never ask to talk to Paul's sister because guys have a code, right? We have an understanding. But to keep it short and not go on long-winded, if I was able to negotiate my way past that gatekeeper, then I would have to talk to Sarah. And that's a whole other set of challenges. And to use your words, a whole other set of trade-offs. Am I going to be funny enough or clever enough or smarter enough? Am I going to get her attention in the first 10 seconds? And that was the breeding ground and the training ground for cold calling. Yeah. We had to cold call every day. Not only did I have to worry about the people on the side of the phone I was calling, because 9 out of 10 houses had one phone in the kitchen, I had to worry about what my mother was thinking about while she was listening. I had to worry about my younger brother making fun of me for getting rejected by Sarah and Sarah's family. I had to worry about my dad. Why is he wasting our money? Because you had to pay for each phone call back then, I think. Why is he wasting our money making phone calls? There were all these different parameters that we had to negotiate through, and they're gone. For all intents and purposes, they're essentially gone. And that's what I have a problem with.
Jay, what do you think? Because you're right, and younger listeners probably be like, "What you had to?" Everything you say brings us all back, and is so true. You don't really think about it until someone puts it in your face, like you just are. What exactly that dynamic was like, and how many things were going on within it, as opposed to here, let me just DM so and so, and if they respond, great. If they don't, there's no risk, right? There's very little. So what do you think the consequences are to the generation who doesn't have to do those things? Like, what does that lead to or not lead to?
This is a slippery slope, and please feel free to edit anything that happens from this point on. I will go on record, internet. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a professional in any of these things. I'm not even a teacher, even though I did want to be a teacher when I was in high school. I didn't want to be like Paul Richmond. I think what it does is, I hesitate to say this because it's super loaded. I think it thins our skin.
Yeah.
I think the fact that we didn't suffer the pain of rejection at a young age in areas that are safe, I think it makes it harder for the next generation.
Yeah.
I was taught by a mentor of mine a long time ago when I was having kids, and I have 3 children. I have a 27-year-old, 22-year-old, and an 18-year-old. Maybe she's 23. Sorry, Emily. But basically, you want your kids to fail safely. You want them to make mistakes, fall on their faces, bloody their nose, skin their knees. You pick them back up and you have them do it again. Whether you want to use the bike analogy or the sports analogy, there's 100. I think we're losing opportunities for them to fail safely. So I feel like without those opportunities to fail, they're missing out on some serious learning.
Jay, have you read the book or heard of it? It's called The Coddling of the American Mind. It's by Dr. Jonathan Haidt, Haight, I believe is how he spells it.
Coddling of the American Mind?
Coddling of the American Mind, and it is right on this topic. It is, because I see, I think we all see the same things, and it's you put it very well again, but you or Paul, I don't know if you've read it, but any of our listeners, it's on this topic, and it's the same discussion. It's hey, I don't want my kid to fail at all, so I'm just going to protect, as opposed to fail safely, as you put it, and become resilient. And that's why I love sales. Build a resiliency in me, and I'll hear it from people all the time. I don't know how you're so comfortable doing X or whatever. And clearly you're that way, Jay. There's no question about it. And it's almost like it's this idea that it's just who I am, and I was born this way, and I could have been raised by wolves and I'd still be this way. It's just not true. What's true is I went out there and cold called and failed and realized, oh, this technique doesn't work that well. This technique does work well. And I use the word, people, manipulation. I go, well, let's unpack that a little bit. Yeah. We're all manipulating our environment all the time. Now, if I manipulate my daughter so that she doesn't fall down the stairs, is that a good thing? I would argue it is. Manipulation can be used in the wrong way, and I don't.
No, I think that's the right word. I think that's the right word, and it's just like so much in our language. That word resonates negative in our brains, but I'm trying to manipulate how you perceive me for the first time, Matt. I made a choice. I'm going to dress for the job I want, not for the job I have, right? Something that was beaten into me a long time ago. Dress for the job you want, not the job you have. So I want to put on my best face. I took a shower, I cleaned my skin, I put on some cologne. I want to do all the right things to help my mind frame. And this is just part of me selling. Every day I wake up and I put a little product in my hair. I put on clean clothes. I'm putting my best foot forward. Yeah. Maybe I'm wearing my Sunday best, literally my best clothes on Sunday, or maybe I'm wearing a Cubs cap and a hoodie. I've done that before in interviews like this as well. So we're all doing that. And to your point, I don't think manipulation is synonymous with sales. No. I don't, but I understand why some people do. But just like the word manipulating could have a positive connotation, I think the word fail can have a positive connotation. To use you as an example, Matt, you and Jeff Bezos, because you're about the same in terms of income. You guys
very
are
similar.
Very similar.
He's asking to borrow some money right now for another yacht. But
one of my favorite stories about Jeff Bezos is no one talks about the 10s and 20s and 30s of his businesses that failed.
Yeah.
And what Matt does better than I do Paul, and what Bezos does slightly better than Matt, just a little better than Matt, is you recognize your failure and you recognize it early.
Yeah.
So he might sink 100 or 150 or 500 million into an endeavor, but what he doesn't do is sink $1 billion
Right.
or
Yep.
5 billion. Whereas some people would be frustrated and be too proud or too egotistical to recognize the failure. He's had literally, that I could name today, 12 or 13 businesses that have been colossal failures. But his genius is failure isn't a bad word to him. He just puts it in the pile. This business failed. Put it down, stop investing in it, and let's move on to the next one. And I want the same for our kids. If I called Sarah, Paul's imaginary older sister that I should never even talk about, if I called her and she said no, that's not the end of me trying to meet girls. That's the end of me trying to meet Sarah, right? And if Paul kept me at bay and I was very persistent, well, if the phone's not working, guess what? I'm going to try another channel to bring it back to a business sense. If email's not working, pick up the phone. If the phone's not working, write a letter. If direct mail didn't work, well, maybe I'll create an ad. You know, it's the same in life. Not all of our kids are destined for the same path, thank goodness, because that would be boring. And they're going to have to fail to figure it out. And I don't think that's a bad word.
Not at all. I think it's one of the best words, and I deliberately have set my daughter up, the person I care about more than anyone, of course, or as much as anyone. Now that I got two of them, I've deliberately put her in situations to see if. Right now we're working on buying a piece of real estate, a commercial property here, and I don't do the negotiating. She's got to do it.
Wow.
She's having the phone call. We'll have a conversation before. Here's what I anticipate. Here's some tools to work with. Here's some channels if that doesn't work to you, as you put it, Jay. But you're making the phone call by yourself. And this is her second major deal she's working on. We already landed the one a year or so ago, but I think it's so important. It's vital to her future for her to fail. Well, I mean, what a strange thing for a parent to say, but because I care about my daughter more than anything I possibly could, I want her to fail. What a mind-blowing thing for a parent to say. But Mike, it's so true. I actually live it. It's so true to me. I actually manipulate the scenario so she's got to be in a position to possibly fail. And so, of course, she fails a little bit, and then she corrects and moves forward. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I interrupted. Sorry, Matt. And I'm really working on that. I own that. I apologize. Paul, can you help me understand from a coaching point of view? Everyone talks about a great coach puts his or her players in a position to succeed and be successful. Are there opportunities or are there areas of learning where you can set up a player to fail? Does that ever happen?
All the time. I'm glad I get to chime in now because I've been thinking about no. A couple. Well, the trouble is people are more afraid than ever to fail today because the perspective that all failure is public. Everything's put out there. When you call Sarah, all right, I might know, and I might tell a couple friends, or my mom tells people, but it's local, right? The irony is, though, even though it's more public, it really isn't, because if the people don't know you, what's the difference anyways?
Right.
Like when I see a clip of there was a high school that lost a state championship in baseball because it was a drop strike 3 or something, and the catcher thought he caught it and he just threw it up in the air and everybody ran around the bases. All right, I don't know those people, so their perception is, oh my gosh, the whole world thinks we're idiots and we fell. We don't even know them. So the social media, kids are afraid to fail because their perception is it's this national catastrophe. And so as a coach, I try to let the kids know people don't think about you as much as you think they do. Like that's a weakness of ours, right? You obviously want a kid to fail more in practice and put it all out there so you can set them up to succeed in a game. But if you miss the last shot, you should see how devastated a kid is in basketball. And I'm like, yeah, because the whole game came down to your one shot. It wasn't Laura following out. It wasn't so-and-so
Right.
getting a technical. It wasn't me forgetting I didn't have any timeouts left. Everybody thinks failure is the end all because they're perceiving that the whole world cares. And I think we knew the whole world didn't care back in our day because no one knew about it
Right.
except our little circle. Now, there were a lot of pressures there as well, but you could just move, you could go to college and never come back and people don't know where you
Yeah.
went to. Where's Waldo? Where's Jay? Where's Matt?
Yeah.
So to me, that's the hard part. You have to try to talk kids into you have to use social media to build a brand to sell yourself today. Even on LinkedIn, kids hesitate on what to put on LinkedIn because they're like, that's so weird. Everybody's looking at it. Well, yeah, like account executives and influencers and business people that might hire you. So I don't know if that makes sense. That's just my take.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I appreciate what you said. People don't think about you as much as you think they do.
They really
And
don't.
this is something that I've been talking about with some of my friends recently. The internet is forever, and people worry about putting a piece of content or putting a poem or putting a quote out there because it's forever. And what people think about is everyone, again, that word, everyone is going to see that. But to flip it to this conversation, well, anyone can see it, but 1 out of 7 billion people may really see it. And the odds are that those numbers are so small, really no one's going to see it. If we're speaking in hyperbole and we're speaking in extremities, this is going to sound harsh. The millennials and the Gen Zs and the younger people, they live in this world where everyone's going to be at this party and everyone's wearing this brand and everyone's going to that university. Everyone's going to be attending blank. Truth is, well, anybody can, but very few people do. And they have this collective mindset, I think, that is overwhelming. And again, not to get emotional and get too weepy, but that's what makes me sad. It makes me sad that they have this pressure and this anxiety and this sadness that, with very rare exception, because I know depression is real and I know people have really hard days and come from really hard circumstance, but I feel like the masses are more sad and more stressed out or more anxious than ever before. It's easy to blame the parents. It's easy to blame social media. It's easy to blame the general media. But that's one of the things that I'm looking for solutions and looking for trade-offs to help with my own adult children.
Well, your worth doesn't come from this podcast or coaching or your job.
Oh, it doesn't?
Well,
No.
sorry. I mean, you'll be lucky to break into the top 100 of the episodes. We used to guarantee people that, but we can't anymore.
102. I'm 102, 103. I can't go any worse than that.
So I saw something on TikTok last night. That's why I want to drop back to that. This guy's squeezing an orange and he's like, what's going to come out of it? Orange juice, right? Not apple juice, not any blah, blah, blah. So then he goes, when you face the pressures of life and people annoy you and people bug you and you can't stand people and things don't go your way, they're squeezing you. Well, what's coming out? You blame other people for what's coming out of you, but your anger, your anxiety, your hate, it's what's in you. So that's what's coming out.
Still you. It's a really good word picture.
Yeah, well, that's the value of TikTok.
Good. Well, bring it full circle, because I think we started this conversation with my wife encouraging me to investigate TikTok, and don't be afraid of the boogeyman. Actually, investigate it as a form of communication and a channel for media. Anyway, that's interesting, Paul. Whatever comes out. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish the thought.
The anger, the greed, the envy, the jealousy, that's all inside. That's all part of the juice. That's really interesting.
So I'm reading a book right now. I sent it to Matt yesterday. Well, I'm listening. I cheat a little on Audible.
Okay.
Shifting the Monkey. And the premise behind it is everybody has monkeys on their back, and bad workers, miserable people, they try to shift their monkey to you. So you have everybody else's concerns and the weight of the world. and gives lots of examples. And that's why I thought about it with you, Matt. You have a lot of employees, and when an employee doesn't show up and they blame you or an excuse or somebody else, they're putting their lack of responsibility on you. And he talks about different things leaders do that willingly put other people's monkeys on their back. It just, without going into a lot of detail, it's a fabulous listen. I don't know how it'll be as a read, but it's a fabulous listen.
You know what? You know what's interesting, Jay? I'd love to get your take on this. Let's use that scenario, and we don't have to use my employees in this case because seems too personal. But I've seen it.
Yeah, sorry.
No, not on what you said. On what I'm gonna say. Not on what you got.
Gotcha.
Not that. I'm not saying that at all. I bring that stuff up all the time. But let's just say a hypothetical scenario like that. And Jay, I really do want your take on this because you talk about the things that kind of make you sad, and but I have those things as well. And I think at the top of the list is we'll take a scenario like that where someone doesn't show up to work on time, right? Paul, it's a great scenario. It doesn't have to be in my place, but any place. And
could be a student, could be anybody, not just an employee.
And they don't. I'm sorry, I didn't get up soon enough. It's my fault. That doesn't. I don't see the personal accountability and responsibility anymore. It is now the employer's job or the teacher's job to make, in so many cases, and this is anecdotal, to be fair, but it's okay. That person was late; they didn't get there on time. It's now my job as a teacher to comfort them and tell them it's okay. It's not your fault. It's the world has conspired against you. And the reason you didn't make it on time is not because you didn't get up on time or your car was stuck in the driveway because of snow. But everyone knew we were having a snowstorm tonight. Why weren't you up an hour early like I was, like my dad made me when I was a child? Or why was your car not parked at the end of the driveway like I used to when I was a kid because I knew there was snow coming? Why was there seems to be, and it doesn't make me angry anymore, or not that often. It makes me very sad that I see this negative thing happen to me, and it's all these external factors and these other people's responsibility to fix it for me, as opposed to, okay, this thing did happen to me. What did I do wrong? How could I change my behavior, my planning to prevent these kinds of things happening in the future? And to say I see it every day is probably one of the biggest understatements I could make. I see it countless times a week. And I've gone from anger and that kind of feeling to what what are we doing to these children and these people? What are we doing? I'll get to you, Paul. I see your hand up. What are we like? We are not setting these people up to succeed in the future. It makes me very sad. Go ahead, Paul.
Now, I know you'll read this book you always do, but it gives some of those exact scenarios. And the bottom line is you treat them like your best employee and not their worst, and hold them accountable. Like you'll know what I'm talking about when you go through it. But really, the whole premise is when people try to throw their shit, their monkey, their responsibilities, their burdens on you, you have identified them now, and you have tools in place to push them right back on them. And, not to say they end up being a great employer, they wouldn't be terminated or something like that, or not to say a student doesn't fail, but you guys, I think you'd both find it very interesting. So,
well, because to be clear, I'm not against mistakes and failures.
Right. It's not that.
But you want to talk about mistakes and failures? I'm at the top of the mountain, guys. You know what I mean? What I always had to have at the end of the day was accountability for.
Right.
And that's what I see just disappearing is. And I see whether it's Paul and whether it's, I don't know if I hear this, parents put it, Jay, when you got in trouble in high school, which I'm sure you did all the time, it wasn't it wasn't the teacher's fault, I presume. I mean, when it was your parents probably looking you square in the eye and saying, what's going on here, and what's Jay going to do to change it, as opposed to, Mr. Richmond, you're at fault. How dare you talk to our child like that, or what? I just see it in so many aspects of society. I see it on the TikToks and the Facebooks of the world, the reels and the videos, and this. It's funny it's funny to push people to a limit and videotape it so you can post it. It's funny to it gets clicks. We promote so much negativity because frankly, because of capitalism, because it gets views and it gets monetized. And it's, why promote a good story when a bad story gets 10 times the clicks on it, and that generates more ad revenue? I mean, there's a lot going on here, guys, I know, but these things socially are very scary to me.
Well, so that's what I wanted to talk about with the social media quick. My feed on Twitter is all positive because I block or don't follow people, and I certainly don't stop on anything. So I'm always scrolling through what I want to scroll through. So it's coaching, it's positivity, even very few sports, because I don't need all those highlights. Our biggest following for this podcast is Instagram, and my Instagram reels are all about different podcasts, self-help. Lately, it's been softball and basketball videos, because once I start looking at some of those reels, more stuff comes up. And I think the same would be with TikTok. And the superpower is to try to scroll fast past that and feed your feed, if that makes sense. So, but it's out there, but there's really a lot of good stuff. But it's so hard because you get sucked right back into it, because sometimes it's funny or interesting, even if it's negative, right?
What you just said. All right. So do we have another hour, right? We're on till 11 today.
Yeah, we should wrap it up soon, but go ahead.
Well, I can't. So
we'll bring you back.
Matt,
yeah, Jay, you got to come back. Say what you got to say, though. I'm not.
Yeah.
You started by saying, Jay, I want to ask you a question. And then I was paying attention. I was trying to listen. And then you started talking, and I'm just going to share how I felt, because I have to. Yeah. I started to get upset. I could feel that. I could feel this anger. I could feel this energy, not to be weird, but resonating from my chest. And I started to get tense, and I started to get anxious, and I started just a little tiny bit of sweat, because what you're describing is sort of what I do wrong and what I do poorly. And I didn't feel like I could answer the question as the thought leader or the expert in the room without owning the fact that employee or that person or that student is what I do wrong. There's no excuse for being late. And I think the word that you didn't say during your question was, there's no reason for not being prepared. It's not just for Boy Scouts. I mean, we should all be prepared. I'm off camera. There's piles of papers because I didn't prepare for this interview. And Paul said not to, because it's a little bit more fun if it comes naturally.
It would be no fun.
Yeah, but I wish I had an agenda. Hot buttons I want to talk about. Let's talk about politics. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about religion, because those are all polite conversation topics, right? But to get back to the word that I really struggle with the most, Matt. Thank you for laughing at that joke. God, you guys are a good audience. I struggle with accountability, personally, professionally, socially, in my marriage, and with my children. And I started to get angry because you were describing a lot of my weaknesses and a lot of my demons. Paul, I appreciate the fact that you're smart enough and intuitive enough to feed the algorithm what you want to see at the end. I think you're in the
not always
the minority.
It's easy to switch it. I mean, you have to stay focused. Yes, it's easy.
It's not easy. It's not easy. It's simple. There's a huge difference between simple and easy. It's simple to do. But what happens if you're in a moment of weakness and you look at something that's, negative, or you look at something that's R-rated, or you look at something that's worse than R-rated, right? To keep it PG here on the podcast. What if you slip up once? Then all of a sudden, the algorithm is going to change your feed again. So is it simple to reprogram social media channels? Yes, it's simple, but it's not easy. And we're going to learn as some of these court hearings come to be told, they make it even harder than the average person, because they're not interested in you as a human being. They're interested in your checking account and your savings account and your whatever kids are using, PayPal or Venmo or Apple Pay. They're not really interested in building you up as a person. And I take this the right way, guys. I'm in this for a living. Social media and social media management is an extension of what we do as a marketing firm and part of our digital marketing strategy. It's not inherently bad. Just like a lot of things that were created through science aren't inherently bad, but bad people can use them for bad purposes. So I'm starting to get information from God, and I'm starting to get information from the universe that I need to open my mind back up to social media. I have a Twitter handle that was hijacked, and I don't know where it is today, or X. I got off Facebook by design. I'm not on TikTok. I do have Instagram, but I haven't used it in years. So maybe I could do a better job of investing a little bit of time in these channels for the good, right? And searching some of these things that you're talking about. One thought I had is, do we know factually, and Paul, you can fact check this, did Jeff Bezos invent the podcast?
No, you know who did?
Hold
on, it's somebody from MTV.
Yeah, that's who gets the credit, Paul. What's his name? He used to be the guy on MTV. Jay was right in our wheelhouse.
Adam Curry.
So I'm going to say this, and this is going to sound really naive. I think podcasts were invented to sell books. You guys gave me three books that I want to go research. I want to give you guys one, and
please.
There's a book I've read twice, and I'm going to start it again, probably first of the year, a third time. It's called Falling Upward by Richard Rohr. And if you're nodding your head, if you guys know about this book, it talks about the second half of life. And this is something that I try to bring to young people, whether it's a sales rep in my company, whether it's a neighbor's son or daughter. The first half of our life, and it doesn't necessarily happen to everybody at the same age, but we're just building a vessel, for lack of a better word. Maybe in the Bible they call it wineskins. Maybe today we would say our net worth. You're buying houses, you're buying cars, you're buying clothes, you're meeting people. Matt, you're building businesses. Paul, you're winning championships. You're doing all the things in the first half of life for yourself. The second half of life is, well, you've got this great vessel. What are you going to do for others? And that includes having conversations like this, teaching, volunteering, donating, and all the second half things that are really better for the greater good. There's, I think, a lot of books that are on that same theme. I really enjoy it, and there's a little bit of a Christian angle from the author, but it's a lot of tongue in cheek, which I think is, and it's a short book, right? Paul knows I'm kind of not a heavy reader, if you will. I have a lot of Audible books as well. And I think it's worth you guys checking out. The other one that I wanted to mention is, I have it right here because I always forget the author's name. It's called Wild at Heart, and it's by John Eldredge. It's written by a man for men, which isn't always popular these days, but it's got a male perspective, and it talks about just this passion, this fire. And the reason I bring this up, Matt, you had talked about accountability and employees that may not be living up to what they're doing, and that really started to churn something up inside me, because I know I can do better. I know I should never be late, and I should always be on time, and I should always be mindful and thankful and grateful, but I'm not. And that book talks a lot about that. And
interesting.
I've always used the expression dragons, because dragons are safe, right? And I like to consider myself a dragon slayer. And every morning I get up, I put on the armor, I grab my shield and my sword, I go out to battle in the marketplace, and I fight the dragon. Some days the dragons win, and I come home with my tail between my legs, literally, and I take off the gear. And how was your day, honey? It was terrible. And this person was mean, and this person said no, and we didn't have any success. And those are failures, which we already have discussed as a positive. And then there's days where we beat the dragons and we drive the dragons away, and the dragons have to retreat, and we had a successful day, whatever that means to the individual. And that book talks a little bit about that as well. So you guys have given me some things to do. I wanted to share those two books with you guys.
That's great. I have not read either one of those, but they both sound very much worth worth our time. So I've got them both down here. Thank you.
Yeah. So we've sold about 6 or 7 books for other authors, guys. So good for us.
Well, I have one more, but I'm going to save it for next time. It's about sales, and it'll give us something to talk about. So I'm not giving you the name of the book.
You think
today.
we'll have a difficult time finding something to talk about,
No,
Paul? The three
no.
of us?
Was I supposed to talk about sales today? Sorry.
No. This is
that.
how it's supposed to be. We don't want anything scripted. Like, just how it goes.
Do we have to like do a little dance so we can have it on TikTok, or is there supposed to be some
Yeah.
motion or something?
Probably not a good idea, Jay.
Okay, good.
That'll be next time. We'll be talking about the growth of our TikTok channels.
I don't know if that's a safe place to sort of wrap it up, or if you guys wanted to talk about anything else. I'm really thankful for the opportunity to do this. Matt, he's never gonna share this with you, but I did literally beg 3 or 4 times to come on this podcast. That's how much I respect and appreciate what you guys are doing.
Well, thanks, and I'm very sincere about this as well. That I'm glad you did, and I'm glad you're here, and you've got a really good perspective, and very you're a good communicator, and fun to be around and fun to talk to, and I think the things that we've talked about are important, not just to us, but to people, and that's why we could talk about a lot of things, but there's some things that I think are important, and I'm glad you've got the courage and the wherewithal to talk about those things, and I think we should have you back again in the near future here, because I think there's a lot more to go with this conversation that we didn't cover in this hour and 10 minutes or so, including more, not solely, but including more about your journey and within sales, because I'd really like to hear more about that. And I think our listeners could gain a lot of value from whatever your story happens to be, because you've been doing it a long time. So I don't want to glaze over that. I think we need to revisit that.
I had a bunch. Oh, go ahead.
No, we will. I'll hold us accountable on air. We'll have you back the end of January, early February. How's that?
That sounds great. I look forward to that. And again, Paul knows me, and people, again, my daughters that'll watch this, my two fans, they know that I'm not afraid of the microphone, and I don't shy from it. So any opportunity to share and to talk, and it's a pleasure meeting you, Matt, and hopefully we can do this in person. I loved the episode that you guys did from the Only House. Do I have that right? The Only House?
Only place. Yep.
The Only Place. I thought that was fantastic, and I'm much better face to face than over technology.
Likewise, when you're hopefully, I don't know if you ever come back up to this, we ought to absolutely get together and have a face to face conversation, because as I've been saying since forever, well, particularly the beginning of COVID, when everyone told me that I was going to spend the rest of my life living like this, I said probably what you said, Jay. There's not a chance. People were social creatures, and sitting at the table together, breaking bread or whatever is what we do. And there's not a chance. I don't know what's going to happen. I just know we will figure out a way where we've got to be together, because as nice as this is, and that we're hundreds of miles away and we can have a conversation, that has its trade-offs. That us being together and nothing replaces that. And what a wonderful reality that is, at least to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. And for me, I know you guys will echo this. It's all about relationships, whether it's with your students or your players or your employees or even your family. That's it. That's another thing that resonates in the 2 books I suggested. It's 100% about the relationship and the journey, to use your word. That's the journey is important too, but definitely the personal relationships. And I think the 3 of us, our businesses have allowed us the opportunity to have a lot of personal relationships. I think that's really important.
Very rewarding.
Yeah. So what we'll do is our people will talk to your people. Okay.
Yeah, please.
And until next time, hey, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah. Jay,
thanks for making time, guys. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Jay Sedgwick, everybody.
Thanks, guys.